gunshot echoed through the empty parking lot long before anyone understood what had happened. One moment, the world was just another quiet evening outside the grocery store, and the next, chaos exploded in a blur of screaming tires and shattering glass. A little girl froze beside her fallen bicycle, staring in terror at the man who had thrown himself. In front of her, an injured stranger gasping for breath, his arm already soaked in blood. That man was a single father named Mark Willis, and he had no idea that the child he protected belonged to one of the most feared biker groups in the state. And he had even less idea how his life and his daughter's lives were about to change forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing what's right, even when no one's watching, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Mark had always lived his life quietly, working long shifts at the lumberyard, making simple dinner for his twin girls, Emma and Lily, and trying to be the kind of father he wished he'd had growing up. Things weren't easy since their mother passed away, but he carried the weight with a quiet strength that made the girls feel safe. He didn't have much, yet each morning he walked them to school, holding their small hands as if they were the world's most fragile treasures. The night of the shooting, he had only meant to grab groceries after work before picking up the girls at his sister's place, when the masked man burst from the liquor store, waving a gun wildly. Every instinct told Mark to stay back and survive for his daughter's sake. But when that frightened little girl stood directly in the gunman's path, instincts didn't matter anymore. Without thinking, he pushed her out of the line of fire and took the bullet to his arm instead of her chest. The robber escaped. The girl survived. And Mark lay on the cold pavement praying he'd stay conscious long enough to make it back. To his daughters, the girl's father showed up moments later, shaved head, tattoos, leather vest, and a presence that filled the entire street. His brothers arrived too, roaring in on motorcycles that made the ground shake. They belonged to a notorious biker group called the Hells Angels men, known for being tough, intimidating, and fiercely loyal to their own. But in that moment, their hardened expressions faltered as they saw the stranger bleeding for one of their daughters. Mark didn't remember much after that, only bits and pieces of the leader kneeling beside him, gripping his shoulder with surprising gentleness, promising they'd take care of everything. He passed out before the ambulance arrived. The next morning, despite the doctor's orders, Mark insisted on getting discharged early so he could walk his girls to school. His arm was bandaged and immobilized in a sling, and he looked exhausted. But nothing would stop him from fulfilling that quiet promise he made to himself years ago to show up, no matter how broken he felt. What he didn't expect was the scene waiting for him at the school gates. 2 long rows of motorcycles lined the entrance, their chrome glinting in the sunlight like polished armor. Between them stood dozens of bikers in leather vests, tattoos on full display, their arms crossed like a wall of iron. Parents and kids stared from a distance, unsure whether to be afraid or impressed. The air hummed with the smell of gasoline, leather, and something else respect. Mark froze, confused, until the leader stepped forward, with the little girl he'd saved hiding timidly behind him. The man's expression wasn't intimidating today. It was full of gratitude so raw it almost looked like pain. The bikers had come not to scare anyone, but to honor him, the quiet single father who had risked everything for one of their own. As Mark walked his daughters through the biker-formed aisle, Emma and Lily squeezed his hands tighter, unsure but trusting in him completely. The bikers didn't move a muscle, but their eyes followed him with something resembling awe. They were rough men, the kind of men the world judged without understanding. But today they stood not as outlaws or rebels. Today they stood as guardians. Whispers spread among the watching parents, rumors blending with wonder. By the time Mark reached the doors of the school, the leader placed a hand over his chest and nodded deeply, a gesture of honor in its purest form. It wasn't spoken aloud, but the message was clear. You protected one of ours. Now we protect yours. That moment changed Mark in ways he didn't see coming. The heaviness he carried from years of hardship began to ease, replaced by a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. He realized that kindness had a way of echoing back, often from the most unexpected places. In the following days, the bikers checked in on him quietly, fixing the broken fence outside his house, bringing groceries, making sure he had enough support while his arm healed. They never asked for recognition or gratitude. They simply acted, moved by the example he had set. And for Mark's daughters, seeing their father honored that way planted a seed inside them, a belief that bravery didn't always roar, that heroes could be humble, gentle, and ordinary. It taught them that goodness had the power to ripple outward, touching even the toughest hearts. One evening, as Mark stood on the porch watching his girls play under the fading sun, he finally allowed himself to feel the weight of what had happened. The fear, the pain, the gratitude, it came all at once. But beneath it all was something stronger: hope. He understood now that the world was full of hidden connections, and sometimes the act of saving one life could bring unexpected family into your own. As their motorcycles rumbled in the distance that night, he realized he wasn't alone anymore. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and make sure to subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us of humanity's quiet miracles. Before the ending, take a moment to comment below. What would you have done in Mark's place? In the end, Mark never considered himself a hero, but to the little girl he saved, to his daughters who adored him, and to the group of men who would ride through fire for their own, he became a symbol of courage. His story proved that sometimes the bravest people aren't the loudest, the strongest, or the most feared. They are the ones who choose kindness, even when nobody is watching, even when the cost is high. And that ordinary man, walking his daughters to school with a bandaged arm and a humbled heart, showed an entire community that true strength is measured not by the battles you win, but by the lives you protect along the way.